All right, so I think we'll get started now. Today, we'll be talking a little bit more about sort of what we're calling the Great Service Management Reset. Really about the cycles that service management has gone through over the years, but more importantly, what that means today for clients that are looking to either evaluate a move towards a particular thing or off of something. So we'll introduce us real quick, and then we'll go into again a very brief history of service management, just so we understand where this moment is in the cycle of the systems that are available. And then we'll talk through about sort of what is causing people to move, and then when they do decide to move, how are they planning on moving? And then we're heavily biased towards JSM, which is Atlassian's Jira Service Management platform. We'll talk about why we like that so much as the move away from existing systems into the next era of service management platforms. So starting with myself, my name is Dave Hansen. I am in charge of go-to-market here at Flight Crew. My main mission in life over the past 15 years has been helping customers understand both the platform of whatever their service management platform was and how to get it to where they're going. So I've had the privilege of working at Flight Crew for the past year now and been focused entirely on Jira Service Management. So I'll be able to talk more about myself later if we have time, but that's been my role, is helping align customer expectations, budget, and outcomes with the appropriate tooling and projects. Paul Wydra, who will be joining shortly, he's in another meeting. He's in charge of business process consulting and architecture here at Flight Crew, one of the co-founders. He came like me and like Mark from the ServiceNow ecosystem about a year ago, where he was a former certified master architect. Why that's important is, outside of it being a really, really hard certification to get, it really focuses on not just the technology, but the business process of service management. And we'll talk about more why that's important and why that's important, especially when we go into design and plan phases of our projects later, when we talk about how to move away from ServiceNow. And then Mark, I'll have him do the intro for himself since he's on the call today. Um, Mark is another one of the co-founders here at Flight Crew.
Hey everyone, nice to meet you here virtually anyway. Thanks for joining up, and thanks Dave. Like as Dave mentioned there, I kind of sit in between Paul and Dave as far as roles go. I'm leading the strategy here, and I've got experience in the technology industry over the last couple decades, and have been focusing in on the service management space. Previously was a configuration process owner and implemented a huge service management transformation at Intel, and then ended up joining with ServiceNow, where I worked there for just a bit over 10 years or so on the solution consulting side of the house. And ended up this last May joining up with Paul and Dave here to start this endeavor. And as we'll get into, because we've just been seeing, I guess, the writing on the wall, if you will, as far as the market goes, there's just an inflection point that's going on here. So I think we're in an opportunity for our organizations and our companies to go through and really, reassess where their spends are and how their operations are running, and if they're investing wisely at this point. A lot has changed in the last 10 years, and so much of the hype that was built between, say, 15 to 10 years ago to up until now has been around what we'll get into a bit about, embracing having one big system that can do everything, making accounting for certain technology like shortcomings that may or may not exist anymore these days. And so, you fast forward 10 years till now, and we're in an environment where it's ready for another change. And so that's what we're going to be talking about here. But nice to meet everyone, and I will hand it back to you, Dave.
Thanks, Mark.
Mhm.
All right, so let me click through here. All right, so just before we get into the history, just talking a little bit about our approach and the approach that we've always had, but with Flight Crew, this is our show, so it's very much front and center to everything that we do. So we are very unbiased when it comes to the tools itself, and you'll definitely see why that is later. But we've always been focused on the outcome for our clients. So very, very agnostic when we went and looked at the market. If anything, we would have been biased towards ServiceNow because that's what we had spent so much time doing. But that was not the case for the right tool for our clients. So well, again, we'll talk into that in more detail, but just know that overall, we didn't come into this with any particular business plan other than the right platform for our clients, being the guiding star there. The next piece of really the fundamentals of what we do is very prescriptive when it comes to consulting. Uh, Really, we found that with service management, there's many different paths that can lead to many different destinations that all look important or equally important up front. So having a best practice approach to helping guide clients through workshops, through defining requirements, through just establishing timelines and expectations, all of that type of activity, we like to come to the table with a best practice outline, if you will, and then work with our clients collaboratively through the best way to get them to where they need to go. The worst thing we found in the service management space is showing up with a blank piece of paper and asking people to fill it out and then going to deliver against that. So we come in with a very prescriptive approach to getting our clients where they're trying to go. And then finally, integrate is really core to what is going to enable a lot of the more transformational outcomes that clients are looking for. So big on integrations, especially these days, and we'll talk about that in more detail. But overall, we're looking for nimbleness and scale when it comes to what our solutions are for our clients.
And before we go on, Dave, if feel free to make this as interactive as possible. We've got content for, probably the better portion of this hour or so. But there's time built for any kind of questions or topics you might want to bring up. So I'm going to be monitoring the Q&A section and the chat. So if you have any questions or want to bring anything up, feel free to do that, and then I'll interject, and then we can discuss it live.
Yeah, that's a great call out. We are pretty active in the chat, so it will get looked at. All right, so a quick history, right? So why do we think this is such an important moment, not just for um, JSM, but for clients really looking to figure out what this enterprise service management thing is in the world of one, a lot of buzzwords, whether it's AI or some flavor of AI, and sort of the digitization of the workplace now that work from anywhere is more or less the standard globally. So going back to how this all started, but the modern service management era really started in the 80s. That was when processes were being defined. IT departments were really having to have something in place, and that's really where if we're going to start putting a line in the sand anywhere, that's where it begins, right? So computers are coming into the workplace. They're connected to other things. There's applications. How these things work together, how often they break, all of that type of activity really required IT in particular to standardize how they were dealing with all of this. Um, Really, where the foundation of the modern service management era came, I would argue, was around 2000. So that's where this concept of a configuration management database came out of the need for that essential place for all of the things that were connected with each other and were occasionally breaking, as well as ITIL. So that's where ITIL, I think we're up to version 4 now. It might be a new one-ish coming out soon, but that's where ITIL started as well. Then finally, or not finally, but next came the SaaS delivery model. So all of these tooling were built to support process in the CMDB and making it all interconnected. Really in 2010, that's when SaaS became a viable business model for the enterprises in particular. That's where ServiceNow really started to hit its inflection point, when I was fortunate enough to join with Mark and Paul during that period of time. And then finally, where we are now is this enterprise service management observability era. So when I say enterprise service management, I mean it's IT is no longer trying to take advantage of these service management concepts that they basically pioneered because they had to. Other departments are now starting to actively take advantage of it and enable sort of cross-functional workflows. And I'll talk more about that later. But it's generally speaking, service management has gone mainstream at this point, and many other departments are trying to get rid of shared inboxes, point solutions, so on and so forth, and bring it together in a service management footprint. The big driver in change from here and previously is around this AI stuff, and AI is a big category of a bunch of different subcomponents that we'll go into later. But also experience is front and center to the success of these service management initiatives. So looking back again at this list of companies, um, they nothing really made the transition, right? So uh, HP bought another tool to come into HP Service Manager. BMC bought Remedy to build out their sort of ITIL stuff. I think there was a purchase for CA too. I'm not as familiar with that one. But when we looked into the 2010s, that's where ServiceNow came out and really ate everybody's lunch. Cherwell was in the mix for a while too. I've included Zendesk just because they were pretty big there on the customer service side of the house. But really what we're seeing now is Atlassian sort of hitting that inflection point as well in terms of it's the right tool for the right era. And we'll go into that in more detail. But the big thing I want you to take it away from this is these inflection points happened for a variety of reasons that Mark will talk about a little bit more specifically, but the tools themselves did not make the transition. So ServiceNow is trying to make the transition. We'll see how successful they're going to be, but in general, all of these different eras had different tools that dominated. Mark, was there anything that you wanted to add or anything that I missed there?
Um, yeah, I think that was a super great overview, actually. The reason we're showing you this history and kind of discussing it and taking some time with it is the format here is why are people moving off of ServiceNow and or other legacy type large platforms? Uh, when do they make that move and how do they make that move, right? So part of the why is this history here. It's a cycle is what you're seeing. So these service management toolings and the service management platforms, they have a life cycle, right? Where they'll go up, they'll peak, and then they go down. And then the next iteration or next generation of toolings and platforms, take their place, right? And they start slowly replacing it until one of those or a few of those platforms become the leaders in the market in the space and the best at what they do, and then they start faltering, and then another generation comes up. That's the cycle that we're seeing. And the reason that happens here in the service management arena is because as service management experts, we're covering all the technology landscape and infrastructure and the whole environment to run all these operations within an organization or a corporation. That technology changes like crazily, at a crazy pace and a lot too. And what this timeline is representing from like a technology perspective is, you've gone from systems that were manually managed and like command line job schedulers and mainframes and hardware monitoring instrumentation and stuff like that, right? Back in the 80s, that's when the IT formed. And so you had to account for that from a process and an organizational perspective. And then it started getting into the personal computers and networked systems, right? And that's kind of like your 2000s time frame, and that's when things became a little bit more complex and ITIL came out and everything else. Then it started moving into the enterprise expansion. The internet was expanded, globalization was a new strategy, and this is when now IT became like an integral part of the business strategy. So there was always this segmentation between IT and quote unquote the business. Now that line is starting to be further blurred and just merged together, and that's when it started. And that's when ServiceNow really made the big hit because their play at that point was, we're able to handle this globalization, this integration of information technology into your business operations like in a successful way, and did a really good job of messaging that to the market and building products that would get out there. Then after that globalization, expansion happened, we got into the cloud era, I call it. This is when agile and DevOps is starting to get really big, and you see a lot of like lean IT and agile service management concepts coming out. This is really when Atlassian 2 started, I think, flourishing kind of in that era there in the 2000, like call it 2010s or whatnot, like this SaaS area. Speed and flexibility and continuous delivery, those all became the priorities, right? The technology again became larger, scaled out more complex, did more things, had a lot more variety to it. And then we get into like the current times, our 2025 here. Now we're in the digital transformation hybrid work environment, organizational wide service management, not just IT sort of concepts. And what we found is, this thing started in the 80s. We created systems that had to have some rigor around them to support them. Those systems got more and more complex and larger in scale. And then, now here we are in a situation where we really need to focus in on, our cost as far as like what's happening. The experience is a huge play right now. And then incorporating these, again, newer technologies like the AI. So that's why those technologies are listed at the bottom there.
Yeah.
That usually drives this cycle is because there's enough new technology that comes out, new ways of doing things. Like Dave mentioned, integrations. Back in 2010, integrations were a point of contention. A lot of maintenance was associated to them and overhead, whereas now in 2025, that's just not the case anymore. And so that changes how you look at your technology and how you design it and how you manage it. That's why people are looking to make the change right now, is just we're at that inflection point, I think, in this, I'll call it service management era cycle that we're going through. And
Yeah,
so
and
Atlassian is the up and coming here. Yep.
where we're going, Mark, is with the change from the 2000s, 2010s, it really was what was considered SaaS at the time was also not SaaS. They just took something kind of from the data center and threw it on a server and gave it that title. But what we're seeing now, and especially again with like JSM2, is it's the true definition of what that means and being something that you don't have to manage as much as if it was your own environment and essentially homegrown system, or even a system that you bought that you were managing in a data center. It's really changing how all of this comes together. And I know that's going to be big in what we talk about next.
It's a great point. And actually there's a question here from the audience on what we think the next era is going to be, or what the future is looking like here.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, well, obviously we're biased towards Jira Service Management, but I think the delivery model of true SaaS, not what was happening before, um, is one. But again, that focus on experience first, is that design is going to win out, and how easy it is to both manage and continue to roll out is what ultimately is going to be what wins. Um, Specifically because of one, getting more people on the tool is going to enable more potential for cross-functional workflows. And the second piece is in that environment where you have the largest adoption, that's also where what I'll call AI for now, just because everybody understands what that means, but that's where the intelligence piece and that technology is going to actually become more useful in terms of specifically what ServiceNow calls the agentic experience. I don't know how standard that term is, so that's the only reason why I'm calling it out like that. That would be my take, is that you have to have a bunch of work flowing through the system in order for that those more advanced automations to be valuable. But when they do work at scale, you're talking about transformational change. You're not talking about a lot of the incremental stuff where, hey, we replace this tool with a cheaper tool, or uh, we saved our people on average 4 minutes a day by whatever and then they do this thing where they stack it up across 1,000 agents. That's 4 minutes a day. Like that doesn't move the needle for a business. It's really making the business itself more responsive to itself and being able to adapt quicker is what's going to be a game changer there. So that's my take on it. I don't know what yours. Do you have something different there, Carly?
No, I think that's a great perception. I see the, I'm going to move on here pretty quick, but I see
Yeah.
the future is going to be around autonomous operations, I think, with the AI solutions we got coming up. Agentic AI, like you'd mentioned, it's a lot of expectation setting, but there's some futures there. Service message, digital twin CMDBs are going to be another technology and solution that's coming out. I think that we're going to have to account for, which we're doing with Atlassian. And then same with, in general, there's like a general convergence of DevOps, ITSM, and FinOps, like under kind of a big digital service governance model. So it's all part of that ESM expansion. But
Yeah. So yeah, we'll I don't want to drone on about it, but
Mhm.
that's kind of the big picture there, and we could go into the more detailed picture later. But just generally speaking, it's moving outside of IT, and when it moves outside of IT and goes mainstream, there's a lot more meaning to the business that touches real revenue than sort of where we were 15 years ago, where we were replacing an expensive tool with a cheaper tool that was easier to manage. So speaking of times to move, yeah, looking forward, obviously we made the transition ourselves to JSM. I think a lot of other folks are going to do that if they haven't already started thinking about it. It's mostly probably because they're not aware of how capable Jira is at this point in time. So we'll talk specifically about that towards the end, and we have a short demo teed up to talk about the differences there. But when we're talking about why people move, really comes down to cost and experience, as Mark talked about there. And cost isn't just the licensing and the implementation. There's organizational effort. I don't know if that's a real term. It's a term that I've used as resonated with clients before. But just the amount of like effort it takes to build out a team and interact with the appropriate stakeholders, that's a skill set on its own that just having a partner in there is not going to do for you. So there's a high cost associated with ServiceNow specifically, and then the experience, right? So uh, oftentimes, and I don't want to say we were part of the problem, but we were on the front end of a lot of these sales campaigns, and there was a lot of potential that the platform could unlock. It was just getting that to a final state where it was actually delivering the change that was promised was a very difficult path for a lot of different reasons. It has nothing to do with the technology. It had nothing to do with the customers. It had nothing to do with the partners. It had nothing to. It was all three of those things had to work very, very well together in order for that to happen. So it was. I don't want to say it was rare, but it was uncommon for uh, these things not to have one or two goes. And I say goes, I mean like starting an implementation before someone really got it right. And how ServiceNow is sort of looking at it as the next big thing is agentic AI and then getting into this whole CRM thing. That doesn't solve fundamentally the problem that customers were running into. So overall, again, cost and experience issues. There's some external market pressures that some clients are under when they go look at the tooling that's driving it too. But in general, it's just simple as cost and experience is why people are looking to at least evaluate the move. And evaluating the move, this isn't rocket science, right? It's go look at what you have, go look at what exactly is being actually used, and then go see what else is on the market. When we do this exercise with clients, but even in the past when we were in the previous ecosystem, there was a very tough time justifying the overall investment. Like at the high end of the market, and we'll talk about that. There was still some value there. I remember, I think it was Deutsche Bank or some bank in London. They were able to just move 1,000 full-time employees outside of London Center to kind of distribute around the country. So they were able to save a ton of money that way because people could work a little bit more in cheaper areas essentially, and the work would still get done. But in terms of what's happening right now, looking out at the market, there's a lot of stuff that does ticketing. A lot of times ServiceNow gets stuck as a ticketing tool, or a pretty basic ITSM tool. So that's what's driving the move. And then sort of when you look at the market, there's a lot of stuff out there that can do what you're probably using ServiceNow for today.
We've always heard the term out of the box in the ServiceNow world. So from the implementation side, in the time I've spent there, right, the implementations themselves, we would a lot of times struggle with the getting to the actual state of being able to keep within out of the box, right? There's always things that pulled away from it. It was difficult to actually stick to that concept. Everybody wanted it in the, hey, yep, we're buying this product. It's going to solve all these different issues that we're having and keep to out of the box. But when you have a app development platform where you can kind of do absolutely anything with it, a lot of times you get into these scenarios where you're building out these complex use cases and a lot of times one-off processes that don't add any value to the business. And maybe it was something that could have been approached differently in a business process conversation. And the unfortunate thing of a platform like ServiceNow and being able to have it do absolutely anything can really, turn bad quickly. As opposed to when you're looking at it as, does this fit a service management framework for the best practice of how it should work and what should be considered as part of the process? You start to get to more of that agile methodology and the true way that Jira Service Management approaches this. So when it comes to the ServiceNow world of out of the box and the methodology that a lot of partners and places have for how to approach ServiceNow engagements with, it's a kind of a mix of waterfall and agile. That's hard to achieve on a product like that. Whereas in the Atlassian space, Jira Service Management, it's really aligned to true agile. This is how this is done rapidly, but also you're getting the right types of outcomes that are just sort of natively part of this. So the concept of out of the box is very different here. You're provided with the templates where you can get to a great starting point very quickly, and you could do a lot with it. But you don't have to worry about so much hey, I'm going to kind of go down the rabbit hole of getting too complex or customized in certain areas, when you could really just focus on, no, this is a properly built solution that we're leveraging, and that's how I can onboard all of these other teams more quickly. HR, finance, facilities. It's just meant to be expanded and easily used throughout more of the organization, whereas that's traditionally harder with some of these other legacy platforms that are out there, where it's a 6-month project just to be able to replace a shared inbox for the HR team. Jira Service Management really shines in being able to truly do that in a matter of days or weeks versus the more traditional complications that you can run into.
So yeah, so to his point, right? We like JSM, but one of the things that we run into or customers run into when they go through that pretty traditional review process, there's stick with the existing tooling is going to be the path of least resistance unless there's some pressure to change. But it's not from a actual like when they if you're truly going to do like what is the business value of this? It's very rare that you should stick with ServiceNow these days. And what, as Paul mentioned before, easier to use, and we'll go into a lot of those details later. But there's a lot of misconceptions around sticking with the tooling that don't apply. And the first one is honestly that JSM is probably half the price of ServiceNow from just a licensing standpoint, and from a overall management of the tool, there's just less to do. So there's a misconception around, oh, that's either too good to be true, or it's not. It's 50% less to build and manage, so it's probably gonna have 50% less functionality. So that is something that we have to do some education around. The biggest full one that we'll see is mistaking your service management program for a tool. And again, we'll talk about that more uh, detail, but just because you own ServiceNow and it is a platform that can do a lot of things, doesn't mean it should. And even when it's good where it's supposed to be, which is in IT doing complex support and operations workflows, uh, that doesn't mean you should keep it there. And again, we'll talk about that in more detail, but that is something that we have to do customer education on. Uh, this one platform fallacy ties into that as well. So in today's day and age, integrations are a thing that are, again, easier to maintain and manage. When ServiceNow was being built, and part of the reason why it's so bulky to deal with today is because everything had to be on the same platform in order to avoid some of those integrations avoid the involvement of those integrations. So that's where architecturally you could start feeling the difference of um yeah, it's one platform, but it's basically uh it's a bumper sticker on a number of different cars that don't always play well together. Mark, I saw you come off mute. I think you want to add something there?
Uh, no, no.
Oh, cool. I wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what was going on there. All right, cool. And then the ServiceNow is the current market leader. Again, we talked about that before, but they're really the market leader of the previous era. When we look at true enterprise service management, how teams are using it, that market is going to change real fast, and it'll be. I'm sure ServiceNow will figure out a way to maintain a foothold in it, but I don't think they're going to keep their dominant position right now for too much longer, for reasons that we'll go into when we talk about JSM. The last one, and this is the part that we're really passionate about fixing. So a lot of this is talking points, and making sure that concepts are well understood. The don't want to touch it is where we definitely come in to really shine a light on how they're using the tool today, and helping them understand that, hey, this move might feel uncomfortable, but it's not something that it can't be done quickly, and can't be done cost effectively with a great ROI. So to just getting rid of this, it's too complex, we're too complex sort of misconception is something that we bring a lot to the table to help with. All right, so stick with the tooling. There are some use cases for it. It's just not nearly as many as people think. Uh, what we're really talking about is either Augment or completely switch it out for a variety of reasons. But again, this is all doable in this modern era, whether it's augment or completely switch out, and you're going to have a better core experience if you're using ServiceNow for those complex IT support operations. Great. It's still built to do that originally, but you're going to muddy your backlog. You're going to muddy how the program works. You're going to slow everything down if you start trying to expand into an enterprise service management world in that world, because the other use cases that you're going to run into, whether it's HR, finance, procurement, they're better suited for a tool like Atlassian, because they don't have the heavyweight requirements around the CMDB that you'd have to navigate through. So they can get their stuff faster and not slow you down in the meantime. So
And
just to
I
kind of,
think the
oh, go ahead.
concept of everyone else is huge here. I know from especially what I've seen in the past with again tools like ServiceNow, they're built great for what IT needs a lot of times, and it can end up getting very complex very fast. What we're finding these days is there's not much that ServiceNow can do that you wouldn't be able to do in Jira Service Management. Um, but when it comes to onboarding other teams, that's where there's a lot of the struggle today. So, your IT a lot of times is spending all their time with how do we get this working for us? We need to leverage the tool for these certain processes that we have and that we need to follow. And then when it comes to, well, these other shared services teams want to get on board and leverage the same platform, it's a struggle. And because it takes so much effort from your local admin team and the folks who support those legacy platforms, versus being able to, again, leverage templating or ways that aren't hey, we built a super expensive product that addresses every single need the HR team has. That's not what customers are looking for, we find. It's really, no, we have a shared inbox where we just need a single place where we can track requests from users. Like, great, that shouldn't be a $200,000 implementation and $1 million in licensing. There's a way to be able to do this. And I've always struggled as a technologist for, on a lot of these platforms, you could see, yeah, this is the right way to do it. But if costs or just overall how things get positioned to customers get in the way, whereas what we're seeing in the JSM world and this space is much more aligned to, no, the right solution is provided the right way. And, back to the true agile way of onboarding these teams, back to being able to have a way to quickly onboard them or support them. But even the concept of needing the everything on one legacy platform is being changed today. And I know we talked a little bit about, integrations today are more table stakes, and, especially in the Atlassian world, so you could pretty much integrate with everything. So even if you were in the camp of, for one reason or another, hey, we can't move off of our current legacy service management platform, but we're not able to get the other teams who want to use the functionality on board, that's a great use case for, yeah, get them on JSM, and we could always integrate in the back end with, whatever tool is. I know we're going to talk more about the different strategies there, but it's you typically find when we were in the implementation side of the legacy platforms, it's hard to get to the next phases outside of the core focuses, just because there's so much complexities and everything involved in a lot of those stand-ups, where the rest of the organization really sort of doesn't get a chance to take advantage of the same use cases and benefits that a true service management system can provide.
All right. So talking about specifically our methodology for moving people off of ServiceNow. Um, so again, there's a lot of stuff that we have to do to get through any misconceptions early on, because there's a lot of just uncertainty in the market in terms of why would I leave the market leader? That there's some of that, and then that the technology piece of I don't know what's going on with that. I'm not sure if I want to take this project on. So we worked through all that, right? But then being able to help them understand, all right, this is the plan, so they can justify it to all other stakeholders that might be hesitant as well. And then going into this tailored design and workshops piece, again, that goes into the prescriptive approach that we have for designing and rolling out these solutions. So it's not just a matter of, hey, what do you want to do? It's all right. We looked at your environment. We talked to everybody. This is what your phase one looks like. This is how we're going to go about it. And then this is how we're going to roll off of ServiceNow. And then after we get them off of ServiceNow, that's where it honestly gets fun for us, because once you've been doing ITSM for long enough, one, I guess we can be very prescriptive about it, but two, it gets a little repetitive for us. So seeing the enterprise service management projects come in is just a lot more fun for us to work on. While we have a great time kicking our old sales teams accounts out of their patch and into ours. While that is fun, the for us as professionals, seeing the potential of these enterprise service management engagements happen is really, really cool and gratifying. And then finally, the program governance piece. Oh, Paul, were you going to talk there? Sorry, I didn't mean to
Yeah, I
stomp over you.
was no worries. I was going to get into part of that too, right? Because there's a lot here, but what this means is, we've essentially been there, done this, got the t-shirt in how knowing the what customers are typically doing in something like ServiceNow. We've seen this many times. We were there for the initial implementations of a lot of those. We know the struggles that those teams and those organizations are seeing. So we're able to have our methodology really aligned to not only how to follow best practices in Jira Service Management and how that implementation should run, but also having the knowledge of what doesn't typically work well with the legacy platforms and understanding and a big piece of this, and what I'll demo for everyone towards the end here, is just a quick glance into asset management. If you're unfamiliar with it in Jira Service Management, a lot of times you hear that CMDB is the heart to the system, and having a great CMDB is huge for everything to work right. And that is accurate in a sense, but the problem is a lot of times companies think they have a great configuration management process and that they're following it because, hey, I have 1 million records in my CMDB. But when you start to look at that, and we do a lot of assessments for understanding of where folks are at, most of that information is honestly garbage. It's not maintained. It's not useful. I don't need to know about 8 disks I have in a SAN somewhere, and be able to keep track of that. You need to have everything in your asset management, in your configuration management database, has to be tied to value, because otherwise it's really a waste and it's just noise in the system. So a big piece to when we're looking at moving from ServiceNow to Jira Service Management, CMDB always comes up. But part of that, and the last piece to this is, so how we go through this process, what we look at, it's not just a matter of, oh, let's take what you're doing on ServiceNow and put it in Jira Service Management. Most of the time, yeah, it can do it, but this is a good opportunity to look at the processes and understand what are the best practices involved there, and having the right crawl, walk, run, getting to fly with flight crew methodology for how to handle that approach and everything that's involved. Because we see, and in terms of flight crew consulting and what we believe in, it's very hard on legacy platforms to actually get from crawl to something like a fly. Whereas with Jira Service Management, that is absolutely attainable, and that's something that we're doing with our customers. So really getting you to that fly state coming from ServiceNow, coming from a legacy platform, we have a really prescriptive approach on how to do that.
So we've touched on this a few times, but just to kind of put it bluntly, right? Time to outcome is a huge piece of why we chose JSM.
Dave,
Just because,
there was a
yep,
sorry, I forgot I was muted. Tried to
sure.
interrupt earlier, but actually, it totally segues into that timed outcome. But there was
Nice.
a question that came through about how long that process takes, and I think that process was the assessment from the
Yeah, the assessment is actually very straightforward. So the actual technical assessment is very it's not like time intensive. So I'd say on average, we can get through most people's ServiceNow environment in about 2 hours with just basically one or two of their stakeholders driving us through. Because we're not trying to process map the whole thing, right? This isn't a 4 month engagement. It's 2 hours of us looking at the environment for specifics of things that are going to be an issue if and when they migrate over. We can turn it around in about a week. So it's not like from a customer standpoint, they just need to sit down with us in their environment for 2 hours for most environments, and then we'll get them sort of the output, which is this is what we can move. This is where we're going to have to rethink some things, and this is what you can't move. We don't see too much red these days. We see very little yellow these days. So it's a lot of green for the process areas that they can feel confident about moving over into Atlassian. So back to the time to outcome piece. Um, it's quick from an assessment standpoint, but then it's quick once we start going into the projects themselves. ServiceNow project on average would be about 6 months. With when I say on average, that would be on average what we'd quote. Realistically, 6 to 12 months was probably on average for the customer global average for standing up ServiceNow. So JSM, I'd say 12 weeks is going to be a long implementation with what we're seeing right now, 6 to 10 weeks being for a lot of different process areas, that being a good range and a good rule of thumb. Um, from the rest of this sustainable, this doesn't require the same level of skill set or admin team. That is 100% part of the reason why we like this. So on paper, as consultants, we get paid on services, right? That doesn't make sense. That we want there to be a lot of work, but we want there to be a lot of the right work. So maintaining a solution over time that's getting out of the box changes with ServiceNow. There's a whole bunch of other things that go into it, but with JSM, it's true SaaS. So really, we're talking about updating process areas and workflows and integrations. We're not really talking about the actual underneath the hood, nuts and bolts type activity that a lot of other tools have to deal with. And again, back to the reason for that is it's a true enterprise service management architecture. All right. So that's why I believe Paul was going to show a demo of asset management that while he's getting ready. Um, Sort of how we think about it, right? This is what I talk to customers about. When at scale, everybody gets their own queue, and when it's all the requests and issues are organized appropriately, all the routing and intelligence that you'd want from an automation perspective to a reporting perspective is all there. But from a customer or end user perspective, doesn't matter what channel they have to engage in, right? They don't have to come in through a portal. They don't have to come in through a phone call or an email. Like they have all of the options. It's really just what options do you want to keep open is the question to you. So um, that's important for adoption, right? And it's important for getting value out of the tool from a not just a automation standpoint, but from that mythical AI ROI that is going to come for some at some point, right? So that's where it all ties together is the agents can get what they need, the managers can get what they need, and the end users and customers can get what they need, all very straightforward. And then that's where you start seeing the transformational change happen from an executive level.
Cool. We got your screen up, Paul. I can see your monitor.
Awesome. Yeah, and I know a big part of the change too is, and the reason we wanted to bring this up is uh, a lot of people still think that, oh, I can't leave ServiceNow because of what I have in my CMDB. And what we're finding through our assessments and working with clients on migrations, that's just not the case. Jira Service Management does have really great asset management available to it. And this may not be as known as a lot of the other capabilities like their AI and really what it does from an overall ticketing perspective. So we generally find that yes, from ticketing, it can do everything you're doing in something like a ServiceNow. It's the same process concepts. You can do workflows, approvals, whatever you may need, self-service. But I wanted to highlight very briefly just asset management, because what this means is not only devices and keeping track of specific tangible items, it's also intangible things. It's a way to keep track of data in an organized fashion. Whereas if you're in the ServiceNow world today, you're used to making custom tables or ways of tracking data. JSM can do all of that. And where that lives these days is asset management. So just a quick highlight of when we're talking about people, we have, hey, this is pulled from our HCM, our human capital management system. Pull this from Workday, ADP, whatever it may be. This is Jerry in the system, and we have information about Jerry. All of these attributes are easy to, of course, add, change, remove. For what do we care about when we're tracking users? But this is where everything starts to come into play with JSM and what you might be doing in your legacy systems, all the relationships with other environments, other, hey, this type of user, Jerry is actually a sales manager. This is work items. So your JSM tickets that are related to Jerry, what Jerry submitted in the past are all here. What office Jerry works in, and what laptops or devices, the actual tangible ones, are assigned to them. So this is all here for you to use. This is a huge part of any migration we do from ServiceNow to JSM includes asset management in some capacity. But I wanted to highlight that, yes, this is here. Yes, this is being used today by enterprises. This is not something that, oh, it doesn't really work and we're cobbling things together or there's paper clip and chewing gum behind the scenes. No, this is here, and this is huge for how you're able to start to leverage a configuration management database that actually works, that you can actually get value out of. It's extremely easy to populate with these adapters that continue to grow. But from existing systems that you have, and even if you're coming from ServiceNow, we can pull from that. Part of our approach will be to look at it carefully to make sure we're not pulling in unused data or what can be considered trash in the system. We're going to take a look at that, but these connectors, the ways of populating asset management, are all here for you to use natively. And this is a big piece to what really unlocks the value for JSM in all the ticket information you could think about. Onboarding users, what are the devices that the user can request, what access do they need to the different software, onboarding processes, everything that's involved in that is another big piece of initial phases that we're doing as part of the migrations. So Dave, Mark, I just wanted to highlight some of asset management very high level to let people know it's there if they haven't seen that before.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. We're at time anyway. So just in terms of typical next steps, if you're looking to move off of ServiceNow or really just improve things, we're more than happy to hop on a call and kind of understand what you need. We'll provide our contact info after. The demo and design sessions, if there's questions about, oh, can this really replace what I'm doing today and make my life as good as you talked about? Yeah, this is really easy to prove, right? So we'll show you not just the what it does, but how we're going to get to where you're trying to go. And then finally, business case assessments and really aligning with executive stakeholders. That's all stuff that we've done over the years. So don't feel like you have to figure that all out on your own. We have all sorts of exercises that we can choose from for what makes sense in order to prove this out to whoever in your organization wants to get involved. So you can visit us at flyjsm.com or flightcrewconsulting.com. This is just way shorter to type. And yeah, looking forward to meeting you at some point and hopefully seeing everyone soon. So that being said, I don't know, Mark, is there any other official sign-offs that we do here? This is my first webinar, so. I don't, do we have a tagline?
Yeah. No, not that we need a tagline. No,
Yeah,
we do.
By
we'll get a
further,
tagline.
faster.
I guess Fly JSM is our tagline.
Yeah, there we go. So that being said, thank you everyone for joining and looking forward to chatting soon. Have a great day.
Yeah, have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.